Hey, Scott Sambucci here. It is time for another installment of the Go Farther podcast series here on the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. Today's episode, ironically, is called Find Your Routine. And I almost lost my routine this morning because the first thing that happened to me when I opened up my laptop is that the internet was down. And so I thought the irony was there in that here I am in my routine, running these podcasts, recording these episodes, and I almost didn't get a chance to do it, but did some troubleshooting, and here we are. So let's talk about Find Your Routine, and let's talk about the Go Farther podcast series. So everything we're doing here with this series of episodes here on the Startup Selling Show is talking through how can you do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. How do you go farther? And so this episode and the last couple of episodes, if you haven't noticed, have really been about some of the more structural components of putting together and organizing things in your life, things in your work, the strategies you can implement in order to be able to do the things that you want to do to go farther. And so today's episode, Find Your Routine, is something that, like all the other episodes, I'm going to share personal examples from my ultra running, ultra training, those sorts of things. And we're going to talk about work life and some examples from and talk about the importance of finding your routine on the work life. And then I'm going to leave you with a few strategies. I've got 5 strategies, as always, to help you find your routine so you can do more, be happy, and surprise yourself so you can go farther. So find your routine. So why is this important? Why do we want to find our routine? Well, we know that work life and life can get pretty harrowsome sometimes. Things get chaotic, life gets a little bit crazy. We have a lot of unplanned activities, right? And below all of that, for me, when you have that normal swirl, if you will, I think there's like a normal amount of chaos in life that we know we need to deal with. A lot of that stuff might be unplanned, but even the unplanned things at some point, they sort of come around in a predictable way, if that's possible. For me, the reason that finding a routine is really important is that I always have this fear, like I can't get into a flow state. I can't get into my zone, if you will, to do my best work. And so the reason that finding a routine is really important is, number one, at least for me, it's how do I reduce decision fatigue? Meaning, like, how do I reduce the number of decisions and choices I have to make every day, so that I can concentrate on the bigger things? It does allow me, with finding a routine, to focus and concentrate on the big priorities, the big rocks in the calendar, so that when it comes time to work on those hard things or work on those big things, I'm not messing around with basic stuff in terms of everything from did I get a good breakfast through to am I set up to do a podcast series when I crack open the laptop and start recording at 5:42 in the morning. And then thirdly, I think there's a certain amount of predictability that we all want. And while a lot of us also like to have that new stuff pop up or those new adventures, those are all obviously important. In between those new adventures, there's got to be some level of predictability day to day. We can't just wake up and kind of ask ourselves, okay, what's today going to be like? There's just no way to do the things we want to do. There's no way to go farther if we don't have some sort of routine. And ultimately, I think this comes down to like having some kind of like machine-like production system. At least for me, I want to know I've got this routine, I've got this process, I've got this system, I've got like a production line every day, every week, every month, that if I just keep doing and managing the machinery in my routine, that I will get the outcomes or the outputs that I want. So let's first dig into finding your routine as it pertains, some examples from ultra running and ultra training. This really becomes important, or became important to me especially when I started training for longer races, and even more so once I started working with coaches. So as I mentioned in previous episodes, when I was a triathlete, I worked with a triathlon coach. As an ultra runner, I work with a running coach. And those coaches, part of that work, of course, is to help me find blind spots and improve on strengths. And part of it as well is to have them develop specific workout routines that are configured to my race, my body, my age, all the things, the specific goals that I want to have. And so they hand me these routines or hand me these training schedules that usually go in 3-week cycles. And from there, it's my job to then fit those workouts into my calendar, which we've talked about in previous episodes, the importance of scheduling everything. The routine stuff comes in so that I can automate some of those workouts in the sense that I know for me, every Wednesday morning, if I'm in a training block, if I'm leading up into a 100K or a 100-mile race or a 200-mile race. So, for example, this summer, I've got a 100K that's mapped out that I'm going to be doing in July. So here I am a few months out and I'm really ramping up the training right now. Well, one of the ways for me to find some good mileage during the week, outside of the weekends when I'm really busy, is that on Wednesday mornings, I go out to a park over in Vacaville, which is about 25 minutes from here. And it's one of the closest places that has a pretty reasonably sized hill. And so there's a trail that I like to run where I'll do some repeats on this hill. So not only am I getting mileage, but I'm also getting mileage with some climbing, some elevation change, right? And so that Wednesday AM time block is in my calendar, and it's kind of my routine to say, okay, on Wednesday, I'm going to go out to Peña Dobie. I'm going to do these repeats. I'm going to get at least 10 miles in, sometimes longer, maybe 12 or 13 if I can fit it in. And that routine for me is alarm goes off at 4, get out of the house before 4:30 so that I can get to Peña Dobie by 4:50 so that I can get my gear on and hit the watch, hit my Garmin, hit start before 5 a.m. So that when I'm finished and I look on Strava, I can see that run started at 4:58 or 4:59. That's the goal. That's kind of the routine. That way I can get done that workout by 7:15. If I go a little longer, it's 7:30, which means then I can get in the truck. I can head home. I can be home before 8 and I can still get my son to school and help out at home. So that's that Wednesday routine. The other routine is the Saturday trail runs. So the other place to get long mileage during the week is on the weekends, right? Hard to do during the week when you're fitting in work and life and soccer and everything else that we're doing as a family. But Saturday mornings, once soccer season is finished up, I can usually get out to the trail, and that becomes my routine. Every Saturday, I know I'm going to get up early. I'm going to get out to the trail, get out there, start running by 6 a.m. so that I can be done and home before noon or 1 o'clock. And that becomes a routine, not just for me, it also becomes a routine for my wife so that she knows with a level of predictability, like, oh, okay, it's Saturday morning. So you're probably going out for a trail run. And the answer is yes, I'm going out for a trail run, and it's on the calendar, it's on the schedule because she and I schedule everything, right? Sunday mornings, another workout that becomes routine for me is a Sunday morning garage workout, meaning that I go out to the garage and typically I'm doing what I call a pull day. So I'm pulling, meaning deadlifts, pull-ups, one-arm pulls. It's a specific workout that I do, and I'm usually doing it with heavier weights so that on top of the heavy run, the long run I do on Saturday, then I pick up on Sunday with some heavy lifting. And then I'll do like a 2-mile run through the neighborhood to run on those tired legs. So those are all examples of just knowing those 3 days where I know this routine of Wednesday morning, Peña Dobie, Saturday morning, long trail run, Sunday morning, garage workout first thing in the morning. Now, the important thing for me, the reason that I put that routine in is not just predictability for me and not just predictability for my wife and my family. It's also, most importantly, because it's about the discipline of doing the workouts. The routine is what gives me the discipline because there's this concept that, motivation, you got to be, get up and be motivated to run. Well, if it's 4 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday and I went to a jujitsu class the night before and I got home at 8 o'clock, had dinner, got to bed before 9, and the alarm goes off at 4, I can tell you I am not motivated to get up and get out of bed, to go get in the truck, drive to Vacaville and start running up and down hills at 5 o'clock in the morning. That is not something I'm motivated to do. It's not motivating to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday to get to a trail run by 6 or 6:30. I'd rather sleep, right? I'm tired. I want to sleep. It's not motivating. I'm not motivated to get up and do deadlifts at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. It's because the routine is what provides me the discipline, because I've told clients this before when they ask things about like, how do I get motivated to prospect or how do I get motivated to do certain things on sales? Well, what I tell them is motivation is for suckers. Motivation is for suckers, right? You got to have the discipline to do the work no matter what, even if you don't feel like doing it. And the discipline comes from having the routine and telling your brain, telling your body, telling your mind, like Wednesday morning, Peña Dobie, Saturday morning, trail run, Sunday morning, deadlifts, and then you just go do it. Now, here's the cool thing that I have found. When I'm doing this routine, especially on those days, which is most days I'm not feeling motivated to go out and do that workout. There's also a routine within the routine. So, for example, if I'm going out to the garage on a Sunday morning to do the workout, I'm not feeling like doing it. Maybe my legs are a little sore from the day before. Maybe I'm a little tired from the day before. The first thing I do is I have this very basic stretching routine, and that is a routine. I get out a roller, I stretch out my back, I stretch out my legs, I stretch out my calves. I start working around. I do some arm circles. I do 11 heavy, deep breaths. Now I'm like, my body's like, oh, yeah, okay, we're in the garage. And then from there, I almost always start with 50 crunches. I start with 50 crunches because it's easy to do. It's like one of the easiest exercises. It's a good warm up. It gets my body moving and it starts to tell my brain, oh, yeah, it's time to work out, time to move to the next thing. And then from there, maybe I'll do a couple of assisted pull ups. And now I'm into the motion of doing the workout. And by doing the motion of doing the workout, now my body kind of takes over so my brain doesn't have to do any more of the work. Then from there, I move into the weights, into the one arm pulls, into everything else that I'm going to do. So the concept here of this routine and this schedule is that it just enables me to do the work that needs to be done to get to the outcome I want to get to. Right? We want those big outcomes. For me, it's, having a successful 100K later this July. The only way I'm going to have a successful 100K is to make sure I'm doing the workouts that are prescribed to me. And the only way for me to make sure I'm doing the workouts is to get it in my calendar. And the only way to execute on those is to have the discipline, have the routine, and just tell myself, I'm going to get this done. Now, there's a couple final things that I do in order as part of the routine. So on those Wednesday morning runs, if I know I'm getting up at 4 and I'm going to be out the door by 4:30, I have a routine on Tuesday night and even Tuesday afternoon. If I know I'm going to jiu-jitsu class on Tuesday night, it might even be Tuesday afternoon where I'm going to the garage, I'm getting out my gear bag, I'm going to fill up my water bottles, I'm going to have my shoes ready, I'm going to have my socks ready and my gear ready. It's all laid out. It's sitting in my home office so that when I wake up in the morning and go to my office, get changed, and just go. I have to sit at the sink and fill up water bottles. I've got the coffee preset. I just hit go. Let that take 7 minutes for the coffee to brew. Get the coffee in my cup, have the cup sit down, boom, hit the car and get going. So by the time I'm in the car, my brain's already, it's like the stretching routine. My brain's like, oh, that's right. It's Wednesday. We're going to Peña Adobe. We're going to do repeats and it's going to be worth it because I'm going to be glad I did these repeats. I'm going to be glad I did these 10 miles midweek because those 10 miles and those repeats and that elevation is what's going to help me have that good race. So the routine just makes it possible to do the work that needs to be done regardless of conditions. In my training, it could be cold, it could be wet, it could be hot, it could be a lot of climbing that day. Regardless of what I'm facing, the automation of decisions, the automation of the routine gets me in the position, gets me in the situation in order to do the work necessary to get to the outcome I want to get to. Now, this also find your routine concept. It stems or it leads really well into personal life as well. So I mentioned the 4 a.m. club. I get up at 4 o'clock almost every morning during the week because that's the time where I'm most productive. I get the most work done. My brain is most active. There's also a bedtime routine. It's at night after dinner, do the dishes, clean up the kitchen, get my coffee pot ready for the morning, spend some time with my son. Maybe we're going to watch an anime at night, or maybe we're going to watch the half of a recorded soccer game, something like that, so that we're winding down. I'm winding down by 8:45. I get to bed before 9, and then hopefully I get those 7 hours of sleep that I'm going to need. The other routines in the week are also about communicating and layering in the work and the things I want to do and with the things the family wants to do, with the things that my wife wants to do. So, for example, one of our routines is that our soccer practices are Monday and Wednesday night. And so for my wife, she has her routine, which is going to the barn on Monday and Wednesday night. So if I'm going to be at soccer practice with my son, that's the good time for her to go over to the barn and hang out with the horses and do some riding, make sure that they're cared for. So that as I'm doing one thing with my son, she's doing the thing that she wants to do so that we can both come home at night and have other times during the week where we can spend together because we've aligned on those individual routines. For my son, one of the routine, we have actually 2 different routines during the week that it's kind of like a little reward for him. On Tuesdays after school, he does robotics camp or robotics club. And he's kind of like doesn't love doing it. but we make him do it because it's science, it's math, it's good for him. And he does, I think, sometimes secretly enjoy it. But as a reward for doing robotics club, then when we pick him up from school, we take him over and he's allowed to have a boba tea. So like Tuesdays, it's boba tea day. Thursdays, Thursday nights are what we call takeout Thursday. This started back during COVID because we needed some kind of break from being at home every day and eating kind of the same food every day. So during COVID, we decided Thursday nights are going to be takeout nights, and it would also be a way for us to support local businesses, local restaurants. So we'd pick different restaurants every Thursday. We make sure we do some takeout, and that's just carried over into our routine. So every Thursday, he knows, okay, Thursday is takeout night. So Thursday morning away to school, sometimes we'll talk about like, what do you want today? Do you want ramen? Should we go over to Jack's? Should we get pizza tonight? What's the takeout that we're going to do? Maybe it's sushi night. We'll do something a little extra this week. So those are two places where he kind of has this little thing to look forward to on Tuesdays and Thursdays, breaks in the week. That's part of the routine. For me, on the weekends, I'm the one that does the food shopping. I'm the one that does the home chores, the laundry, picking up the house, all of the sort of housework that needs to be done because my wife does a lot of the outside work. She does the gardening. She takes care of the chicken. She takes care of a lot of the stuff. Any home repairs, she's the mechanic in the house, not me. And so we have this separation of duties. And so my routine is like, make sure I go to Trader Joe's so we stock up for food, make sure I get my laundry done so everybody has clean clothes for the week. And there's a part of that where I kind of enjoy it, right? It's a little mindless. Sometimes I'm listening to a podcast or maybe I'm watching a soccer match while folding up the laundry. But that routine kind of resets me and knows that I'm preparing for the week ahead. So I don't have to worry about laundry later this week. I don't have to worry about my son not having clean socks or pants or a shirt to wear to school. It's good for me to know my workout gear is going to be clean, and because by the end of the week it's not going to be clean. The hamper is empty, so I go to the bathroom and I have to stare at a full hamper of clothes. So those are just kind of personal routines that kick in for me. Okay, so now let's talk about work routines. How can you use your routine, or how do you find your routine at work to help you do more, be happy, and surprise yourself? How do you go farther? Before we do that, I want to again ask you for your help. The best way for me to help more people is to get this podcast out to more people. It's word of mouth. And by word of mouth, I mean your mouth. So your mouth could be a text message. It could be a review. It could be sharing a LinkedIn post where you saw that this episode was being promoted. It could be telling a friend or 10 that, hey, here's an episode or here's a series of podcasts I think you really enjoy. Maybe it's another founder that you know. Maybe it's somebody on your team. Maybe it's a co-founder. Maybe it's just a personal friend that you're like, hey, man, like I've been listening to this podcast series called Go Farther. It's been really good. I think you should check it out. The best way for us to spread the word is through word of mouth. I want to help as many people as possible that want this kind of help, that want to go farther, people that want to do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. And so the best way for us to do that is to get your help. So please do send a text, send a message, tell a friend. Please follow the show on your favorite podcast player. And please do leave us. It helps the podcast player see that people are listening. It promotes the show to other people like you as they're sorting through their podcast. And it's the best way for us to get more subscribers and ultimately for me to help more people. Okay, so let's talk about work. How do you find your routine at work? So one of the things that has been working really well for me over the years is having themed days. Themed days. Say that 10 times fast. So themed days, what I mean in my calendar, and I've talked about Schedule Everything and the color coding that I do. So you can go back and listen to that episode, Schedule Everything on the color codes. By themed days, what I mean is that generally speaking, if I look at my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, one of the things I've communicated with my team is that Mondays are typically what we call a content day. So Mondays are a day where I'm going to be focusing on creating new content, recording this podcast, preparing for live trainings, putting together content for workshops I'm going to be teaching, webinars I'm going to be teaching. Anything that comes to content related work is typically going to happen on a Monday. The reason I like doing it on a Monday is that, first of all, I'm fresh after the weekend. I'm not too crazy from the chaos that can ensue for the rest of the week, however good of a routine I might have. The other part, the thing I like about Monday is it kind of gives me like some time and some breath to work on things that are more creative before I get into the regular mix of things with coaching and consulting and sales work and marketing work and everything else that we're doing. So Mondays, about most of the day, about 80% of the day is blocked off, and it's called QBR time, Queen Bee Roll. It's a whole different thing I don't want to get into today. But Mondays are my content day. The rule is content first, email later, meaning that if I get up on a Monday and I start to work on developing content, sketching out ideas for this podcast, putting together live trainings, if there's emails in my inbox that come in from the weekend, and this can be any day, it doesn't have to be just Mondays, it could be every morning before I open up email, before I open up messages on Slack, before I look at anything that might have been sent to me. Like those things were sent to me maybe overnight or yesterday. If it was that important, number one, they would have called, or number two, my assistant would have told me, hey, this is really important. You need to address it right away. 99% of the messages you're getting on email or Slack or something else probably do not need to be addressed exactly the moment that you wake up. And for me, it doesn't have to be addressed exactly on a Monday. So just remember for you, whatever that thing is for you that's most important for your business, for me, it's content development. Make sure you're doing that first and making that the routine, as opposed to making a routine. Let me check messages, let me check Slack, let me check Teams, see if there's anything I need to handle, and then I'll get over to the hard stuff. The problem is once you end in that email vortex, it's hard to get out the Slack vortex. A message leads to a chat conversation in real time, which leads to having to get on a call, which leads to finding that there's some process that's broken, which leads to you fixing that process. And now 3 hours later, you haven't done the thing that you need to do. So that's one of the reasons why Monday is a content day for me. That's the theme of the day so that I can work on that before the rest of the week. Now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those are the themes of those days are clients, coaching, consulting, anything that we're doing that's helping out the folks that are paying us money, as well as any sales calls. So when we have a founder that reaches out, like had this week, founder was recommended me by somebody that's in our program, said, hey, I would love to have a chat about your coaching. Great. So Serena knows, and our Calendly is set up so that the only times available are on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays in the afternoon. So it's not just any time on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoon is when I'm having conversations with other founders that want to join our coaching program or might want to get some consulting help. It allows me to block out my early time for clients and consulting, and then my afternoon time for new business, because clients come first. That's we have a whole work principles that we call. Okay, finally, let's wrap up with some strategies here. It's five specific strategies to help you find your routine. So number one, communicate. Communicate with your partners, communicate with your team, communicate with your spouse, your loved ones, the people around you, that this is my routine. So again, I talked about schedule everything. I feel like my wife and I are really good about communicating. A lot of that's driven by me because that's my nature, is to want to get in front of things and know, okay, these are the things that we've got to do this week in terms of pickups and drop-offs. I know you want to go to the barn. I got soccer practice. I got jujitsu. I got my training and my trail running and all of those things. So let's make sure that I know what you need to do at work. I know what you need to do at the airport. I know what you need to do and want to do with the barn and all of those things, so that we can make sure that we're aligning those routines to optimize and maximize the amount of time that we'll have together on the weekends. So that's why when I'm doing soccer, she's doing barn time, right? Or on Saturdays, if we have an away game, my son and I will drive over to Sacramento, Elk Grove, or somewhere else. And that's the time where Lena's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, while you're doing the soccer game, I'm going to go to the barn so that we'll both be home at 2:00, and then we can hang out the rest of the day. So communicating is critical, because it can't just be your routine. Your routine affects other people. Like if I want to get up early and I want to do stuff first thing in the morning, but my wife also wants to get up early and she's got expectations of how she wants to use the house or noise that's going to be happening, then my routine is affecting her ability to do stuff. Because I might say, look, I need to be quiet because I'm trying to do some writing. And she's like, well, I want to get up because I got work to do. Right. So you just got to be able to communicate, number one, as part of your ability to find that routine so everybody's agreeable and they can start to respect your routine and you can start to respect their routine. Strategy number two is know when to break the routine. Know when to break the routine. Like, don't let the routine become a rut. And I'm guilty of this myself, where I will get so fixated on a certain routine that it becomes more important than whether or not it matters to execute on that routine. So an example is morning pages. So every morning I get up at 4, I get a coffee going and do the morning pages. And that's fine when I'm home. And most days that works really well. But there's some days where, especially on a Monday, if I've had a long weekend of soccer tournament or a long training weekend, maybe didn't quite get a couple naps in that I was hoping to get naps in. And now I'm feeling it's Sunday night and it's 8 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock, and I'm feeling really tired. And I might need more than 7 hours of sleep. There are times on a Monday where I don't get up at 4 in the morning, and that's okay. I don't make it every Monday morning. And maybe it's just an extra hour, set the alarm for 5 instead of 4. Other times I'll just let myself sleep till whenever I wake up. And sometimes I wake up at 6. That just gives me a chance to reset and be fresh and be rested for the week ahead. I'm willing to swap out the routine of 4 a.m. in order to make sure that the rest of the week goes well by being rested and recovered and ready to go for the rest of the week. Another example is like what if we're traveling, right? If we're traveling, let's say we're out, we're staying in a hotel. You stay in a hotel, I can't get up at 4 in the morning necessarily and turn the lights on in the hotel room and turn that into my own personal office, right? People are sleeping in the room. But what I might be able to do is break the routine by maybe skipping morning pages or just asking the hotel, like, hey, what time do you put the coffee out in the morning? Because if the coffee goes out at 6 a.m., cool. I'll sneak out of the room. I'll go down to the hotel lobby. I'll sleep in a little bit. I'll do the morning pages and come back up to the room at 7 when people are waking up, right? So just have the routine, but know when to break it so that you don't get into a rut. Number 3, refine your routine. Email is optional. Turn off your notifications. Use airplane mode. These are basic things that you can do to keep control of your time, keep control of your focus, and avoid the distraction, things that are going to impact your routine. So the only notification I keep on my phone is my text message because I want to be able to know if my wife is texting me throughout the course of the day. Like that's the priority, right? At night, phone goes into airplane mode. When I go to bed, airplane mode, so that in case I wake up in the middle of the night, I don't see this flashing text message or something coming from the client in London where it's 8 a.m. for them, but for me, it's still middle of the night, right? So turn off those notifications, use airplane mode. Don't just jump into email. Don't just jump into Slack. Like put yourself first, put the things you want to do first. Then you can turn to those other things. I think that's a big part of finding a routine is sticking to it and not letting others knock you off course. Strategy number 4, schedule everything. There's a whole podcast episode I did just before this that will help you find your routine and stick to your routine. So if you're communicating with the people around you and you're then scheduling it, it's much, much easier to stay disciplined and stay in that routine so you don't have to worry about what am I doing next. You've already got the time blocked to do the things that you want to do and stick to those different routines. And then the last thing I'll mention is to make sure that you're sticking to that routine no matter what. Again, yes, there's times to make exceptions, but you can only make exceptions to the rule when you know that there's a really clear rule. And once you have that routine, I think it's really important to stick to it no matter what. I just mentioned a little bit earlier that motivation is for suckers, right? The discipline of sticking and doing the things you need to do. For me, it's getting up at 4 a.m. and doing the Wednesday a.m. runs out of Peña Adobe, right? Sticking to that team is important. You have to make sure that if you say that this is my routine and these are the things that need to get done, that you stick to that routine so that it becomes a habit, right? Because part of it is that you can't always predict how that particular day is going to go. So I found this on the trail where like I might be pumped up and motivated and ready, and I can't wait to do this trail run on Saturday. We're going out to a new trail. I'm going to be with a friend I haven't seen in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a beautiful day. Going to be great scenery. And then I get out there and I have dead legs. I'm just like, oh man, like this is horrible. And then there's other days like this past weekend, big soccer tournament, 2 games both days, hot day out here in the Sacramento Valley. And so in between games, we came home and I was like, you know what? I got to get a run in. It's going to be hot. It's going to be miserable. It's going to suck. I don't want to do it, but I have to do it. It's part of my routine. It's part of my training program. Okay. So once I got out there, I was like, wow, this run is going really well. It's like really smooth. My legs feel really good. And even though it's hot, I feel good and my time is fast. So you can't predict what that day or that event is going to be in your routine. It's the repetition, it's sticking to it that over time you will have good results. I find the same thing with LinkedIn posts. I might spend 2 hours working on a LinkedIn post and feel like, oh man, this one's going to be a good one. People are going to love it. I'm going to get lots of likes, lots of comments. It's going to impact a lot of people. And I post that thing and I check a couple hours later and there's like 5 likes. I'm like, what the hell? Right. But then other days, because I've got this routine of doing LinkedIn posts a couple times a week, other days I might only like, I only got 15 minutes to rip something off quickly. And it's a short post and I didn't put a lot of time into it. But those are the posts that go more viral and I get more likes, I get more comments, I get more DMs. So the routine is just like doing the work because you can't predict always what the results of that day are going to be. Okay, so hopefully I've given you some ideas, some tips, some ways to be more disciplined, to find your routine, to help you do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. Go farther.